So we are live. What's up? Welcome to another episode of Truth Serum. If it's your first time joining, thank you for being here. I hope that you add us to your library of content. Please follow the channels, share, like, do whatever it is that you do. We're trying to grow the show. We want to create an awareness. We want to give people of color a platform so that they can share their perspectives without being tainted by political parties, corporations, and organizations. Here we have honest conversations from the realest place, and we create opportunities and avenues for people who look like us unapologetically. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you for your support. And as always, we continue to ask you to please like and share the content as we are here. Today, we're going to have a special conversation. We talked about this last show. We touched on it because Gata was here, and we talked about the intersection of Latinidad and being Black. And it's so funny because in our communities, the word Black sometimes seems like something people whisper when they describe someone. They'll say negro, and it's not a bad word. Black is beautiful. Latinos come in a full range on the spectrum. We come from the whitest of the white to the blackest of the black, everything in between. We're Indigenous, we're African. We are here, we're not going anywhere. So I've invited 3 of my friends to come have this conversation with me who have been very instrumental in creating awareness about who we are on social media platforms, and whatever platforms they take hold of, they show up and show you that we are not always maids. We're not always in subordinate positions to white people. We are a force, and I want to just introduce you to them. So my friends are here. Julissa Calderon from Gentified.
Hi, you guys.
Gadiel. You know him from BuzzFeed's Pero Like, also Instagram, very, very vocal. They are all very vocal on social media. Gadiel, how are you?
Que lo que?
Que lo que. Very Dominican. And you know her from Instagram. She has a new show called Share Like Dímelo. And also she does stand-up comedy along with Gadiel. And Julissa's show just got renewed for a second season, Gentified. So
we shall be
very excited.
Dile a Netflix que llame mi manager. So
the funny thing is that you have 4 people of Dominican descent here. So you are going to hear the real and the funny. And then you're going to hear the old people in us, because when we start speaking Spanish, we turn into old Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. But I want to just start with the conversation. I want to ask each of you, what does Afro-Latino mean to you? And so I'm going to start with you, Julissa, and then we're going to go around.
Afro-Latinidad means, to me, it's embracing everything that I am and where I come from. Like you said earlier, we always when we talk about negro or being negra, you like whisper it. For me, Afro-Latinidad is embracing everything. It's embracing the melanin. It's embracing the kink. It's embracing esta nariz, esto labio. To me, Afro-Latinidad is actually owning who I am and being proud of that shit, regardless of the other stuff, right? Because we do know where we come from, Taino blood. Okay, great. And we do know we have Europeo in us. Great, 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 great. But Afro-Latinidad is embracing the shit that people don't ever want to talk about or embrace, especially in our Latin American countries.
Gadiel?
Dímelo. Para mí, Afro-Latinidad is more like exactly what Julissa said. You know, this term is so for us to take back our identity, to identify ourselves. For so long, people didn't know that we existed, even though we created all the music out there que es Latino music vino de lo negro. Pero everybody's like, coño, ¿cómo tú sabes hablar español y tú eres negro? Because I'm Latino, son. So it's a way for us to be like, yo, we here, you know, see us, hear us, and let's talk about, and for us to also wake up and embrace our African side. It's basically saying somos Latino, pero también somos negro.
Sasha?
It's pretty much what everyone's saying, but also culture, because it's like just tapping into what Gadiel was saying. It's like, you know, merengue, bachata, like even that type of music, it came from African, and us listening to Los Palos. Like, how can you like not think that we don't have ancestries in Africa when we be listening to Los Palos all the time, you know? So that is knowing that and knowing your culture and embracing that and not being afraid to say that you are Afro-Latino and not be afraid to be like, well, I'm Black. It's just not being afraid, being unapologetically yourself. I think that's what Afro-Latinidad means to me.
You know, it's funny when we talk about Afro-Latinidad, there's a spectrum within Blackness even, right? And so we did a video for Pero Like, and Amara La Negra made a comment on my video saying that no one who looked like her was in the video. And it didn't dawn on me. I mean, I was like, yo, I didn't produce the video. I was in it. I mean, thanks for, putting me on blast because I just thought that it was interesting that even within the Afro-Latino spectrum, because now some of the darker hued Black people within the Afro-Latino spectrum feel like some Latinos who are not Afro-Latino are trying to appropriate the Afro-Latinidad and trying to co-op it. And I wanted to how you felt about that, because even with me, some people have said to me that I don't have the right to call myself Afro-Latina because of my complexion or because of the texture of my hair. And I was like, when you think about, when you study Blackness within the African-American spectrum, people like Sally Richardson or Quincy Jones's daughters, Kadada Jones or Halle Berry, they don't get to say that they're not Black. Right? Because that in America, they are Black. But it was interesting to me to hear that within Afro-Latinidad, it became something about colorism. So I know, Sasha, that you made a video when you were talking about it within this moment that you had a discovery, that you discovered that you were Black, and you were like, yo, like it was a moment for you, and you actually made a video and talked about it. So I wanted you to share your experience about that discovery.
So when you live in New York City, you come out and everyone that looks like you and talks like you is around your vicinity, right? So you don't see anybody, everybody that looks like you is Dominican, right? So, and then you have the American white, and then you have the African-American culture, right? So when I came to Georgia, I remember somebody was like, oh my God, you're Black. And I'm like, okay. I never said no because it was just like something that I was like, duh. But I'm like, oh, duh, I am, right? Because they were like comparing me to Alicia Keys, and they were comparing me to someone who is African-American, but is also a light-skinned African-American. So I was having this conversation with my aunt the other day, and she's Dominican, morenita and stuff like that, and she was telling me, she was like, oh well, we have to embrace the fact that we're Tainos and Europeo and all that stuff. And I'm just eating my food because I didn't want to like get upset, so I'm eating my food and I'm like, yes, that is true, but do you understand that once you leave New York City, or when you go to a place like Florida or LA, you're Black? Because Black is a race, right? Dominican is not a race. Dominican is a culture, not a race. And I think that we need to understand that.
So, Julissa, you grew up in Miami, where I grew up, and we felt a different energy, unlike New York, because I moved between New York and Miami, which is why I say New York is where my home is. Miami, there's a lot of disparity. There's a lot of differences within those spectrums of people who are Latino, and they point out the indigenous people, and they point out Blackness in people. And mainly people like to blame Cubans for that, but everybody does it. So can you share share about your experience within that Miami reality about being Black and Latina?
Yeah, I don't think I grew up with, like, I was like Sasha, like I grew up amongst like a bunch of Latinos, but I grew up in Carroll City, right? So a Black ass neighborhood, but I wasn't a Black girl. In my high school, in my middle school, I wasn't Black because I spoke Spanish. Yeah. So in my household, I was being told I wasn't Black, right? Because I had a racist ass daddy. And that I'm not learning, that our ancestry. I wasn't taught that. And then I go outside, and outside of my house, even though I looked like this, I wasn't a black girl, considered to like the African American community. Like, I remember dating a Haitian. One of my first boyfriends was a Haitian boy. And I remember in high school having problems, and the African American girls just being like, "Fuck you!" Like, why you like the bullshit that we have perpetuated on ourselves, and them talking crazy to me because I was the Spanish girl. But within like me going to like other houses, like maybe my Cuban homegirl's house and stuff, they'll be like, "Hola, hola negrita," like they'll make sure. Yeah. Those Cubans in Miami made sure that I knew que yo era una negrita. So it was weird. I feel like I didn't get to understand who I was and what I was until I went away, like how Sasha was talking, until I went away to Gainesville, Florida, smack in the middle of Florida, racist ass place where there was literally Confederate flags. I went away for school there. And that's where I really learned who I was and what the world saw me as, because most of those people didn't come from Miami. These are people that came from New Orleans and Georgia and all around the country to this predominantly white school. And to them, when they would see me, they'd be like, "What, are you mixed, like black and white?" Like that's what, and I would, in reality, I was like, well, we are kind of mixed, but I didn't know how to explain that. But it took me to get to college to fully understand I'm a black woman. I am a black woman. I am also a Dominican woman. I don't even claim like the European and the Taino stuff, because at the end of the day, I don't relate to that. I, growing up, related to being a black girl. Like, I related to the culture. I related to the music. I related to all of those things. So for me, I am a black girl. Like, I am a black woman.
Yeah. Woo! You were in California, San Diego. So in California, there's yet another dynamic, because Black Latinos here are not something that's popular, right? And so here it's about everybody who's Latino is Mexican, right? So everywhere you go, because in New York, you're either Puerto Rican or Dominican. In Miami, you're either Cuban. You go to Central Florida, then you're Puerto Rican. And then you go to California and you're Mexican or Central American. And even within Mexicans, the Mexican reality, people from El Salvador and Guatemala and Honduras are always saying, we're not Mexican either. Like, how was that in San Diego?
For San Diego, you're talking to me, right?
Yeah, San Diego.
Okay. Just in case. I remember in San Diego, you don't hardly see any dark Latino, so it was weird. So a lot of times I did this is only a stroke que uno pasa siendo negro y latino. Y cuando yo salía con una mexicana, I will go into the household, meet the parents. Just because I know how parents are, I will talk Spanish right away. So I could be like, which sucks because I know how I look like when I walk into the room. When you're white, you don't think about your color when you walk into a room. When you black, you think about that shit all the time. And when somebody treats you a certain way, you automatically think es porque uno es negro. So walking in, meeting like with my ex-girlfriend's parents, I was right away speaking Spanish. So like that, they could understand that I'm actually Latino, not American black.
So I have a comment here that says, I want to see someone darker than a paperback in this discussion.
Fuck that person. Hey, Rebecca Idols, fuck you, man. That's that bullshit. Like, y'all want to come, let's go. That's one of the things, you mentioned that earlier about Amara La Negra. I hope she's watching this and she's listening too. That's always a problem. I heard this a lot of times of people saying, oh, well, y'all not this, y'all not dark enough for this. Like, why? What are you talking about? What do I look like? When police shoot, police ain't put in a paper bag next to me to tell me, wait a second, does she pass this test? We passed that. We're in 2020. And right now in 2020, we black, regardless of skin color. I'm tired of that shit. Like, because we light skin, what does that mean? What my hair look like? What my face look like? What do my features look like?
Rubia.
Yeah, and you know what?
That shit pisses me off.
Rubia.
Like, come on, right?
The thing is that last week, Rebecca, I had a show and Gata was here, who is a Black Panamanian, and we had a conversation about this, right? So the fact that now we have to monitor and we have to make sure that, we are policing ourselves and policing other people's blackness is part of the problem with why we're dealing with this. And when people say, this is the other thing about the anti-blackness thing that I have made it a point to speak it everywhere I go. every time they talk about anti-Blackness, they always want to point it out in the Latino community, where anti-Blackness exists in Asia, in Africa, in Australia. In the Black community in America, anti-Blackness exists and colorism, which is why Spike Lee did a whole movie that keep talking about called School Days, and you need to watch it. So when we have these conversations about we have to learn to give everyone respect other people's experiences, because just because it doesn't look like yours does not mean that the experience is not valid. All right, now we got
one more thing.
I wanted to talk about that one. Yeah, I wanted to
go.
Dale.
Oh my God, I thought
Yo, I get so hot because it gets me so mad.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying. I just don't understand the whole anti-Blackness, right? Like when people say anti-Blackness, like I look like this, right? I am this color, but my family is dark and my cousins are Black. So when I step out into this world, that is my identity. As you see me, and I understand, but I'm not white. I'm not white, bro. Like, and I understand that there are people that, look my complexion. And obviously we've been in the stigma where it's like, we have to straighten our hair because if we leave it curly, then you don't have your hair done, right? That's a stigma that we've been feeding ourselves. Like, I think it was Elisa Acevedo that says, like, it's like we're swallowing this pill of amnesia where we're not trying to accept our Afro-Latinidad. But, honestly, when this whole curly shit happened, I was like, finally, right? Yeah. Because, and then, just being in this world, but like, when I speak from my family, and I speak from the people that I grew up with, and I speak from the culture that I resonate with. And that's why I say that I am Black, because I am not white. And when people look at me, that's why I did that video where I was just like, my man, do you understand? Because that was the thing, right? Somebody said, called us Afro-Latina, right? And then some people are like, Afro-Latina, I don't understand it. That means you don't understand it because you have not left your home. You have not left your home. But as soon as you walk into the white world, you are Black. You are Black like a Zendaya. You are Black like a Zoe Kravitz. You are Black like an Alicia Keys. You are Black like a Halle Berry. You are Black.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I did learn something new. I didn't know Alicia Keys was Black, but
so ridiculous.
But I do want to add something. I am a lighter Black Latino, and that comes with certain privileges. And I'm witness to that with my sister being darker, me being always with her. I see how people treat me versus how they treat her, and it truly impacted her in the sense that like she thought she was no good for life. She thought she was not gonna amount to anything. She knows that when somebody meets her, they really see how dark she is. And a lot of times we do have these certain privileges that when we talk to experts, about Afro-Latinidad, they're usually lighter colored Black guys. So, we should talk about it more. We should represent more of the darker hue. Is our job to use, whatever privileges that we have to represent the rest of us. But this is also a conversation that we do need to continue having.
Yeah, but
but it's true. I need to
the three of you on the show for specific reasons, right? Because you are my friends and we share in this experience, right? But I didn't look at the color wheel and say, let me bring three light-skinned Latinos. And the reality is about this show is that I do this show every week. And last week, Lagata was on the show, who's a historian, a reggaeton historian, who is a dark-skinned Black Latina and actually spoke on the experience. So when people come and try to indict me for what am I doing, I don't curate my shows. I produce my own show and I bring who I want to bring on the show.
That's
and I'm not going to let anybody bully me and saying I'm not having a valid conversation because it doesn't suit someone's personal taste. The truth is that I try to address it all. And I don't know how many Puerto Ricans are doing shows about, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and all of the stuff that we're talking about. But it's just very, it's frustrating when they point out one thing and say, but you did this. And then I want to say, fuck it, I'm not going to do anything because the truth is it doesn't matter when I try, it always comes with drama. But anyway,
that's a thing. That's a thing. I like, just like what Gadiel was saying. I'm not like saying that's not a thing, that lighter skinned Black people do not have a privilege over dark skinned Black people. But that's the problem right there, right? Because we do that shit to ourselves, and we're like calling to the out, well, because you're a little light skinned. What are you talking? Like, that's the problem. Like, let's cut the bullshit and stop talking about that, because they're already putting it on us. And this is the thing that we have created within ourselves. Oh, tú eres más clarita, so you're a little bit better. What are you talking
That's
about?
not true.
We're still in this household. Me and my brothers are all different shades. I got a lot, way lighter skinned brother than me. And then I have un moreno, like dark skinned. And then I have a brother that's a little bit darker than me. When the police raid that house, police ain't coming talking about, hey, you light-skinned people, move to the side. We
That's true. That's true.
In that bitch going down.
Yeah.
So when we talking this, like, you can't tell me my experience is not valid. You can't tell me because you're a little darker than me.
We can't say
different. Like, no, you have no idea what I have been through. You have no idea. When I was in college, I went to the University of Florida, and I had a white-ass roommate. My first roommate, a girl from the middle of smack nowhere. This girl left me a note on my door one day telling me to not be loud when I walked in, because I was always loud, supposedly, when I walked in, right? Mind you, I know I'm loud.
Well, you're pretty loud right now.
Vamos a decir la verdad, no verdad. I know I'm a loud person, but what you're not going to tell me is that I was disrespectful when I would walk in when you were sleeping, because that wasn't the case. And what you're not going to do is, when you have my number, leave a note on my door so the whole dorm room sees it. Okay. And then in the morning, when I call this girl out, what does she do? She cries victim, white tears. Like, you can't tell me that experience is not of another Black woman that's darker than me. There's no difference right there when we're talking about how the world looks at us. It's not just a white world in Los Angeles or in the middle of the country. No, it's a white world. Period.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't separate ourselves like that. We can't. It's like, you look to the left, tú tienes un morenito hermano. That's what I represent. That's what we
about Latino families that a lot of people don't understand. Because of the colonization that happened on the islands, with our children, our families, our brothers and sisters, and our cousins, we hit the whole spectrum of the color spectrum. So my brother's nickname is Chino. Right. And then I'm La Negra. And it depends on who you're talking to, because to some people I'm La India. And then, my sister's white, or they think she's white, but she has kinky hair or coarse hair, whatever the appropriate term is. But the thing is that we have so much of it in our DNA, because of all of our islands were Taino natives that were, they brought African slaves there and then was colonized by Spain. And you see it, you'll see the darkest person with blue eyes. And then you see it's so alive in our communities that when we start having these conversations, we cannot afford to separate ourselves further within ourselves, because we're not afforded that opportunity. Because when you're Dominican, you are also hearing, go back to your country, immigrants, you're not from here. And then you are hearing from white Latinos saying, look at the Black people. And then you hear the Black American people saying, you're not really Black. So there's a specificity to being a darker hued Latinos that we cannot afford to further divide ourselves, because we are many division. There's so much division.
Yeah. And yeah,
go ahead.
I think, and no, because even like how you said the complexity of that's why I'm not talking about the media right now. I'm talking about even within families, right? So it's true. You could have a white cousin, because it's true. Yo tengo un primo que es chino, right? And he es blanquito. And then I have my dark cousin que es morenito. So, and then we just call each other Latino because we all speak Spanish. And that's why I guess for Latinos it's so different, because that's how we separate ourselves. Because we often think that we're a different entity and we're a different race. But because we're so mixed, it's so hard for us to find an identity within America.
Yeah, because we have a hard time deciphering between race and nationality, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. The three of you have taken to social media to really bring an awareness to Afro-Latinidad. And regardless of how it happens, and if it has something to do with the institutions involved celebrating lighter skinned people or whatever it is, you still have brought an awareness to what it is to be Black and Latino, and creating conversations that were not being had before, your platforms, reached the masses that they did. So I wanted to ask you, how much of a responsibility do you feel to talk about that? Because after a while, I don't know if you feel it feels like a job, like just to address Afro-Latinidad all unto itself, because it's become something that it is mainstream and some people are co-opting. And you all have used your voices for it. Gadiel, you look like you want to say something, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I love talking about it. I don't get tired because every time I go back to my country, I see everybody they think they're white and they're Black. Right now, the more I talk about it, I noticed that my father didn't talk about it before, and now he's talking about it a little bit more. And I think we're awakening now, not only people from the Dominican Republic, but all Afro-Latinos from all over the place are realizing, pero ven acá, we come from Africa. Wait a minute. What was our religion? I'm learning more about the African religion now, about the Oguns, the Yemaya, the thing that they demonized before because it was Black. I'm learning more about it, and I'm learning more about Blacks in Brazil. So the more that we talk about it, the more people know about us, but also more of our own Black people are waking up.
Yeah, I think it's important because it's all about dismantling that lie, right? Because you're lighter, you're better. It's a lie, right? And, being able to just show people that, there is an oppression, obviously, that's happening in America, where it's like, there's systemic racism and all this stuff. And you want to make sure that, within that whole community, like, obviously, we are all in this shit together. Like, seriously, like, we're all fighting the same. We want it to be equal. We want all this stuff. And it's like, it's true what Gadiel said. You go to DR and people don't understand that they are Black. They are Black. And one thing for sure, this is a point, right? Where I was talking to my friend, right? And he's African American. And he was like, and he tells me that he was like, man, it's so cool, like how being Dominican, your culture. Because the African American culture was taken away from African Americans, right? So they had to create their own culture. They created hip hop, and they created so many amazing things, right? But even when I think about the Dominican culture, even though we see ourselves as Dominican being a race, and it's not a race, we consider ourselves a tribe. Like, a lot of times, Dominicans, we consider ourselves a community, and yes, there's colorism within the Dominican Republic because that's a fact. People want to look lighter and whatever, and then the darker, they'll be like, no, más morenito. But you understand, like, we protect our culture tooth and nail. No vengan aquí con tu vaina, esto es mío. Like, we protect our culture tooth and nail. And even us looking within our culture and not realizing that we're Black, we are protecting the Blackness. We are protecting our Blackness without even knowing that we're Black. You know what I'm saying? Like again, going back to la comida, mangú, where did that come from? La tambora, the rice and beans, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Frito. And I remember, and I'm dating like this guy who's Nigerian, and like I would show him like little things here and there that Dominican culture do. He's like, oh, that's like Nigeria. Oh, that sounds like a Nigeria. And I'm like, we Dominicans are protecting our not African American culture, our African culture without even realizing it.
Well, I didn't know about this Nigerian, so obviously I needed an update. But we'll have.
All right, girl, she tried to marry Black.
She went back to the motherland and picked them up.
Yeah.
He scared me out of his panties. Now he be like, he scared me out of his panties.
He blindsided me. I didn't even, because the last time we had a conversation, there was a whole different conversation. But so apparently you are going through from continent to continent. So, Julissa, te voy a preguntar, when you Gentified, the role that you were playing, was that originally written for an Afro-Latina?
Yes.
It was written for a Blaxican,
Okay.
That's kind of what they wanted. They wanted a girl that was a Black Mexican girl. I guess that's right. That's what they call Blaxican, right? A Black Mexican girl from East LA. And then they switched it over to a Dominican girl, obviously, when I came in. But it was interesting. Yeah, they kept saying like I was not what they wanted, right? And which is crazy to me because we think of like, oh well, is it because of the accent? Like, why is that? But they ended up switching it to Dominican girl to fit me. But that's the whole like. I think that's also like a stereotype in saying like I can't be a Black Mexican girl, because like which is I know two girls right now. All right, yeah, I know two girls right now that could be my sisters that could look just like me, and they're Black and Mexican. So within us and within our community, we also have to, there's so much shifting. Specifically, I think a lot of Mexicans, especially because I'm here in LA, that's why I'm talking about it. Not because of anything against Mexicans, because I love me the Mexican culture. But specifically because we're here in Los Angeles and I'm around so many Mexicans, a lot of Mexicans deny a lot of where they come from. Like they're like how they say Dominicans are racista. Los mexicanos son racistas, señores. And the crazy is a lot of Mexicans are racist against their even like Indian blood, which is like they just don't want no parts unless they're white. Because what's her name? Yaritza, I forget her last name, but the young lady who was nominated for an Oscar, the white Mexicans were mad that she looked like the India and she was representing them. So it's ridiculous how this doesn't, it's just all white. It's white needs to be right. Everything else is supposedly off to the side, which is crap. And then when we talk in 2016, I recently shared a video. In 2016, Mexico did a census, and in La Costa, like by Oaxaca and Guerrero off of the coast, there are so many Black people. The census in 2016 the census in 2016 had 1.6 million people in Mexico que identified as Afro-Mexican. And so we're talking about 1.6 million people that filled out the census and were accounted for. How about all of those people that were not accounted for? So we just about to negate all of those people and say, oh, no, en México no hay negro. En cada país Latinoamérica hay negro. Period. So like this whole thing of just us being like, well, we're a little bit more Indian. We're all Black. Like Jane Elliott said, 280,000 years ago, every person was a Black person. Yeah. And as much as you get away from the equator, and as much as you get away from these areas that are heat and where the sun is blazing, you are taking away your melanin. But that does not mean that you don't come from the motherland. Also, I don't even know why people want to be white. Like that shit bland as fuck.
Because they love mayonnaise.
Yo,
I just don't get it. Like I don't want to be white. That's not right to me. Like I don't understand that.
So we have several conversations on the show. Every week we bring a different perspective. We talk about people of color. We talk about issues of people of color. And I think it's important to talk about issues that have to do with women within the Latino spectrum. One thing that I noticed growing up, there was this fascination with Dominicans with saying that they were Italian, like some of these Dominicans that I knew, and always in Cuba. Yeah. I have pure Castilian blood. I have pure Castilian Spanish blood. I'm from the Canary Islands. Then in in Puerto Rico, you hear, I'm Spanish. And a lot of there's like this pride in being associated with a European group that makes you, presumptively, because people don't see you that way, no matter how much Spanish blood you have. If you're Black, you're Black. But what I wanted to ask you guys, ask you each was, when we talk about the Dominican Republic specifically, and the three of you are all Dominican, and I'm Puerto Rican and Dominican, a lot of people, I had a conversation with George Ramos about this, and I think it's important for us to talk about how race was politicized in the Dominican Republic, because the truth of it is that people don't realize that there were consequences, legal consequences. There was terrorism involved in claiming your Blackness in the Dominican Republic. And that generational trauma transcends, and people don't understand that with regards to the Dominican Republic specifically, there is still that in there, you know. So I wanted you all to talk about that because I grew up more Puerto Rican because I grew up with my mother's family. And a lot of the education that I've had about the Dominican Republic has come from my brother, who I met recently. You know, my father had families and all of that stuff. But you are connected directly to the experience. And we indict people and we're so quick to condemn because when we're bitter, we don't want to move forward and we want to stay in the bitterness. But those of us who are really trying to move forward and move our people forward, we want to have conversations that are productive. So when we talk about the Dominican Republic, a lot of times people like to point out that Dominicans are self-hating Black people and that they're racist, but they don't understand the generational trauma that comes along with being Dominican. So I want you to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we all know Trujillo, right? Everybody knows, in this room, at least we know who Trujillo is. Rafael Trujillo was the ruler of Dominican Republic for almost 30 or 31 years, something like that. Think about that. And he was as racist as they come. He will line you up and he will kill you based off of your color. He will kill the Haitians. He wouldn't let the Haitians even come over. So you got to think about, of someone 30 years planting these seeds in people's minds and people everywhere in this country, how do you think, and this was up until 1961, I think he died, something like that. That's not that long ago. That's like 40 years ago. Think about how now we are dismantling all of that and trying to figure it out. And it's because when just like in your household, it's nurture, right? In your household, si te dicen a ti que tú tienes pelo malo for 18 years of your life when you're living in that household, it's going to take you some time when you get out of the household to understand que yo no tengo el pelo malo. ¿Quién dice? But it takes time. It takes education. It takes knowledge. So I think we have to just be a little more sensitive when we're talking about something like a Dominican Republic where the ruler, an asshole of Trujillo, a super racist man, ruled that country and murdered and slaughtered dozens and dozens of people based off of the color of their skin and their hair.
Yeah. But yeah, like I remember one time my grandfather from my dad's side, he is like, hay que tirar todo haitiano de afuera de la República Dominicana, hay que sacarlo todo. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, pero tú eres más negro que Peña Gómez. You know, I'm like, so
the Dominican candidate.
Yeah, he's like a Dominican. So I'm like, you know, I'm looking at him and I am just puzzled because I'm like, this self-hate is so crazy, right? So I remember I went on a panel and I was talking about it and I'm like, you know, I can tell my grandfather like, oh, you're wrong, but he's also 90. He's almost out the door. Like, what am I gonna do to like change his mind? I mean, he died because of this concept, but you know, I'm like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to educate my nieces, my nephews, the youth. We need to educate the youth because of that fear that was instilled in the Dominican culture where you're like, tú eres negro. No, yo no soy negro. Hey, yo no soy negro. I was a negro. And it's just like, do you understand what I'm talking about? And that's why I say that Dominican Republic became we have more of a tribe mentality because it's like, you know, we have been, what was the word that Trujillo had somebody say? He'll have them pronounce a word, and if they couldn't pronounce it right, he would shoot them.
Because the Haitian tongue is a little different.
You talk about the Parsley, you talk about the Parsley massacre? Perejil.
If you couldn't say perejil, bang, you dead.
You did.
So, Shanae, if you can get Amara La Negra or Juju or any of them to respond to my DM so that they can come have this conversation with me, I would greatly appreciate it. I think that one of, you know, and I think as we have these conversations and the divisive tools of continuously pointing out, but the Black people, but the light-skinned people are talking about the Black people, it gets exhausting, right? Because then you see that there are dark-skinned, Latinos who don't give a fuck about having the conversation. They're getting their bag like, you know, whatever. But it doesn't matter. If we're having the conversation, we're having the conversation. And I do address the comments, and I do address what people say, because I see that there are a lot of people who showed up this week who were not here last week when Larata was talking about what she was talking about. This show is not about Afro-Latinidad. This show is about having conversations from people of color and their perspectives, and they are all valid, regardless of what the hue of their skin is. That is the show that I've chosen to do. And so when we start talking about this, you know, and people telling me you can't call yourself Black, and in Miami, they used to call me white girl when I was in high school, and I was like, you know, the funny thing is that I got called white in high school, and then when I went to college, because I went to Florida State in Tallahassee, I remember that somebody made a mistake on my paperwork and put a W, and this white lady in the registrar's office was like, I'm not registering you until they fix this, because somebody made a mistake and said that you were white, and you are obviously not white. And lady, I can't, you know, my financial aid got a lot to do with that W not being on there. So I would like to take it off as soon as possible.
Right. That's funny.
So
that's funny.
Yeah. We are always, you know, it's exhausting, because when you know, the funny thing is that white supremacy's work is so alive in everything that we do. Even when we have these conversations, you see people pointing out, but they're light skinned, but they're not dark skinned, and all of the stuff. That's all a result of the white supremacy, and we cannot perpetuate it, because if we start having these conversations and diluting, you know, whose pain is valid and whose isn't, we'll never get anywhere. And that is why I'm very careful about not demonizing dark-skinned Black people with the issues that I had with dark-skinned Black girls, and then the white girls. I was in the middle of this weird thing. And I always have said, it's none of our fault. It's white supremacy's work, because white supremacy created this bullshit where we have these disparities, and that is how they first divide us. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I'm just saying, like, a lot of people think that it's just happening in America, and that's also a problem, that we think that it's only here in America. The best thing that white people did was go and divide and conquer. That's how they did it, and they did it everywhere. It wasn't, I remember when I went to Australia and I started to learn the culture in Australia and how white people came, they killed all the Aboriginals, they enslaved all the Aboriginals, and how it's just like they kept doing it in every fucking island. They just came in like, oh yeah, we own it. It's like, it's not only happening in America, it's happening everywhere. So for people not to believe in that white supremacy exists is crazy. It's like, that means that you're not, you know, trying to see or understand different parts of the world, because it's happening everywhere.
No, that just means your ass is sleepwalking in life if you don't fucking know there's white supremacy everywhere.
I'm just trying not to call people dumb. That's all I was trying to say.
They dumb, Sasha.
They dumb.
Come on now.
Yeah, they do.
We need to educate us.
The Rabbit Sense, this Australian movie about how they took the Black people and the Aboriginal children, and then they try to indoctrinate them into white culture so that they can marry white people, and so that they can get whiter and whiter as they go along.
Like they say.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we got to deal with it in two languages, right? Like, we got to deal with it. You know, like, people don't realize that it happens. So what would you like to see in terms of the media landscape? Because the media does feed all of this, right? So they do favor a lighter skinned person. I'm the light skinned one in my house. My two children are both Black, and they're darker than I am. I utilize my privilege for whatever I can and however I can to make their lives better. But the reality of it is that it can't make their lives that much better, because white America hates me too. And I don't understand that. So when we have this, they only favor us amongst each other, right? They're only like, you, not like that.
That's all, yeah.
I want you at my dinner table. We do have these conversations, and we do talk about how Latinos discriminate against other Latinos and have anti-Blackness across the board, you know, because we all have heard adelantar la raza, marry somebody lighter than you. And, you know, it's just so sick all over the place. When you think about the future, like, what is it that you would like to see for Black Latinos and in terms of the media and the landscape of entertainment. So
I want to add one thing. A nosotros los Latinos, like Black Latinos, like I think that I feel like the center of Afro-Latinidad centers around Haiti, because the Haitian Revolution was the first time Black people rose up and created their own independence. There were slaves that killed their master and created a nation, right? So they killed all the white people, all the French that were over there. The United States of America went back. France also went back and had them pay reparation over $10 billion, bankrupting their treasury, to make an example out of them that no Black slave in all of Latin America will dare to stand up to their white masters. And to answer your question, what I would like to see in the future is for France to pay back Haiti all their reparations.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, because they were brave as fuck, bro.
Yeah.
Haitians is gangster.
And in Miami, there was a lot of anti-Haitian sentiment, and they would talk shit about Haitians and say they ate cats and they were dirty. And I always used to say, we should all say thank you to Haitians, because Haitians, kicked the door down for all of our liberation. And listen, no one on this show or this panel has ever ran away from the fact that we are lighter. We are that's the reality of it is. But we don't have conversations with light-skinned people too. We're never gonna have hear all the stories, because the stories everyone that is a person of color has experienced some level of discrimination. And we do know about the paper bag test, and we do know that lighter skinned Latinos turn around and do the shit to Black people. They do it in America. They do it in Louisiana. I'm Geechee, I'm Creole, I'm this. Latinos have all these words, which I wanted to ask you about. I thought it was funny that Latinos, because I'm writing about it, have all these code words for Blackness, not to say Black, right? And it's moreno, molleto, halal, like all of these things. But you're light skinned, but you got curly hair, or you got French, so that makes you like more special, which is ludicrous. What are some of the words that you heard that you thought were funny? Because I thought it was, I can't name them all, but I know we got a bunch of them. It's like Black. When they say red bone in English.
Yeah. Halal is a funny one, because halal is just because you're like really light, but they're like, but they won't call them white because el pelo no es fino. Right. So it's like it's that one to me is always so odd.
Right.
Indio is the funny one.
Ella media India.
Yeah, like Indio, ella donde.
Interesting though that in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, Indio is a compliment and a come up, but when people say Indio, it's an insult because it means you're from Central or South America. And how they fuck us all up, because we got all of these ideologies that are so false, and they're all rooted in white supremacy. But you hear them say, oh, it's a India. That means she's either Nicaraguan or from Honduras. And it's so ridiculous to hear that. So, but I think Havao is funny as well. So listen, I want to know about work in your workspace where you're working now. How is the intersection of being Latina and being Black in this climate being affected, or how does it feel in a world with post George Floyd, Breonna Taylor keeps saying her name. She's not trending anymore, and I'm really pissed about that. Like it's happening all over the place. It's happening to Latinos too. How do you feel within your platform, within your world, about what's happening in the world right now?
Well, I feel like it's very important to be very, very vocal, right? And like just reading one of the comments on somebody saying, oh yeah, like, they're all light skinned and none of them are Afro, none of them are really Afro, right? It's like, if my light skinned mixed ass, right, has to speak up so that my Black family could push forward, then that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Because I'm not, if I don't talk about it, like you just want me to be part of the problem and act like nothing's happening, Like it's just it. So I am affected by all these things because we are in a place right now where it's like absolutely like we're in the middle. We identify with with the African American culture. We identify with being Black. We identify with some of our light skinned people in our family and stuff like this. But it's like that's why it's very important that we have this open conversation and understand that we all are fighting the same battles, and like we don't have the time to be separating ourselves like this. And it's important for me to like that's why I do what I do, to try to dismantle this idea because you're lighter, you're better. That's not true. That's not true. I'm gonna do bajo de mi amigo.
Tú eres lighter, tú eres peor. That's what you're saying, huh?
Yeah, right. Nah, we all the same. That is the worst. That's the new thing I'm trying to.
Yeah, I feel like, you know what? I mean, I've been talking about this for a long time now.
Yeah.
I walked into like this world of, if you guys know, I started in theater, but people don't know that, or people don't want to know that or accept that. So they say I started a video at BuzzFeed, and my first video ever at BuzzFeed was Pelo Bueno, Pelo Malo. I had no idea about videos. I had no idea how to edit a video. I had no idea how to produce a video. And I was not told how to make these videos, and no video ever in that platform had talked about anything of Blackness, right? I was the first person to come in and do that. And I didn't, it wasn't like a conscious decision. I was just speaking my truth. So in saying that, how can we sit there and talk like what Sasha said, how can we sit there and say, oh, this whole dark skin, light skin thing? Because I came in there talking the truth of, man, y'all just don't accept us, right? Period. I wasn't thinking about me being a light skinned girl. So I think from the beginning of that until now, I will continue to talk about it. I will continue to say my shit and talk my shit exactly how I do it, regardless of how people feel about it. But I do think in a positive light, to shed positivity on it, I do think that I get a lot of great feedback from people being like, damn, thank you, I didn't know that. Or thank you for including me, or thank you for opening up this dialogue. So I will say that I do think that all of us, we all have this platform for a reason. And I think that we're moving the needle where we are helping people. We are helping people to understand. We are allowing the conversations to be had. I know that I have had so many people contact me to talk to me about how my Oprah magazine essay allowed them to have conversations in their household that they would have never otherwise spoken about, because in their household, I was someone who they knew. So I think that we're doing the right thing. Conversations like this, regardless of the bullshitting people that come in here to talk about the nonsense and say whatever they're saying, I think that we're doing the work, period. We're doing the work. And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And another thing too that I wanted to say, right, is this thing of like when we're talking about colorism and we're talking about, just human things, just humanity, people want to make it a political thing. That's left. That's right. We're not talking about politics. I'm not talking about no politics. I'm talking about the simple thing of equality, of asking to be equal, to asking to have the same platform as other people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't realize that I went through systemic racism till yesterday, pretty much. I was like, oh shit! Like, I'm like, oh shit! I didn't have tutors. Oh shit! I didn't have like recess, like what was it, like extra gym stuff, like to do. Like, I didn't have this. I didn't have that. I'm like, oh shit! That's systemic racism right there. The fact that I feel me, which is sometimes like I'm in the room. And honestly, if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room, right? But sometimes I feel inadequate because I'm like, I wasn't given the tools to be successful, to speak, or to be articulate, to be a person that can actually have conversations with people. Like I wasn't raised like that. I was raised not so much in my family, but within my community, is like, say something, bitch, I'm gonna slap the shit out of you. And I will catch myself in these meetings getting that upset and just result to wanting to slap somebody.
Julissa can relate.
And realizing that it's not the, obviously it made me realize like the Bronx did not teach me how to handle these conversations verbally.
But I think that's okay too, Sasha. I think that's okay.
No, that's fine.
That's the shit out of her ass.
And I think that's fine. You know, I still have that in me. But what if I had a little discussion or a little debate? You know what I'm saying? Because
no, I feel you. I understand. But the great thing about growing up where we grow up, I'm with Julissa, is that I speak that too. So we can have this into conversation, or we can do, we can do this, And look, the truth of it is that I invited the three of you here because you're my friends, and this is my show, and I do whatever I want to do on my show. And I wanted to have a conversation because the three of you have used your platforms to talk about this stuff. I've invited quite a few people who probably think, that they're bigger than me or better than me, or just don't want to have the conversation with me because colorism works both ways, right? There's a lot of there's some hatred towards me because I'm lighter or whatever. But the truth of the matter is I don't feed that bullshit because to me, that's all ignorance. So, Charlamagne came and had a conversation with me. Killer Mike had a conversation, but we got to be honest. Latinos shit on Latinos very easily. And we're so, we want to be the only one. And it's so hard to create things with each other because we are on the takedown sometimes of one another. So how does it feel sometimes being on a public forum and you see the hate shit coming from your own people?
Absolutely.
It's angry. I'm angry.
No, Gadiel, go for it. I mean, I guess because where I come from is you got to learn that there's good and bad, and we grew up with people with saying there's haters, right? We grew up with that. Even if you're not having this platform, not having anything, but I know growing up it was always like you're gonna always have haters. So I think that I was prepped for that. Versus a lot of people who unfortunately are not and end up being like crying those Karen white tears, like, oh my God, I'm attacked. I'm okay with you wanting to tell me whatever the hell you want to tell me. I'm okay with your negative feedback because fortunately for me, and I could talk about all of you all, we've done the work. So anything that you bounce into me, and you coming and sending me, that's bouncing off of you. That's because of your own insecurities. That's because of whatever darkness you have in you, and my light just aggravates it. So for me, I don't think of those things. I'm honestly like, it is what it is. You are falling, unfortunately, victim to the bullshit of the world and America and white supremacy and the negativity of wanting to keep the bullshit happening instead of, like you just said, come on, Aida, show. Talk what you need to talk, and that's what it is. But let's have these conversations. Let's educate versus bashing, because I'm not bashing nobody.
Right.
Yeah, we can't afford to separate each other right now at this time.
All hands need to be on deck. Go ahead.
All hands on deck. Yeah, to be honest, like I do get aggravated, and after I noticed that once I learned I was Afro-Latino and learning the history, and I still have family members that speak that way, and I still get aggravated because I'm just learning about it, and I felt like I was moving through the world always mad because one, I always thought I was white. So I felt like I was lied to, right? I woke up, I'm like, I'm a black man. And I noticed that I fucking hated myself, right? And then the more I learned about the history, and I'm like, hold on, is my last name even Del Orbe, or is that was the slave master's name? You understand what I'm saying? Right. So it was just like, I lived my life trying to be the colonizer, but I didn't know that alabamos tanto el blanco, that we, like, sometimes I think, what would my ancestors think when they were taken and enslaved? What would they think that yo estoy aquí trying to be white? You understand what I'm saying? I'm dishonoring my ancestors at the same time. So the last conversation I had with my dad, and I told him all of this, and my anger, like, he's like, listen, I've thought about this before, and I felt like the way that you felt. And the best advice I could give you is forgive. Forgive them, because you cannot live your life with this hate and this burden on top of you, because it is a weight on top of you. So he said, the best thing you could do is forgive, keep forgiving people, because we're human beings, we make mistakes, and we a lot of times don't know, just like you didn't know before. So, that has helped me lift a lot of hate and a lot of weight off from my shoulders.
Yeah, you have to educate. It's educating. It's being like, just like you, Gadiel, you saying it took you so long to understand that. We got to understand that. Just like what we said, like Trujillo, it was 30 years of him implying all these things on us, and now we have to unlearn it. We also have to have empathy. Like, that's a big thing, because the same way it took you some time to learn it, it's a lot of people just getting to learn. And if we screaming and shouting and being like, you idiot, you ethical, that's not going to work for a lot of people. So I think the work that we are doing, I will salute you, Sasha, I will salute you, Gadiel. Aida, you already know. Like, I salute y'all, because we are doing the work of educating, because our schools ain't doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, and you know, sometimes people look at us and they're like, oh, why you, like, a lot of Dominicans are this complexion or darker. And then you have some white and some, even Chinese people in the Dominican Republic, don't get them twisted. But it's like, you know, why most of us is this color is like, we in the Caribbeans, we ended up getting slaves first. So we started, that was, you know, that happened first. So that mixing, that, you know, the Indios and the white and all that mixing started first, right there. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, we need to understand that we cannot separate ourselves right now. We cannot divide and be conquered. We cannot be, because if we divide, we get divided. If that's not even a word, I don't even know. Just made that shit up. But they're going to continue doing the same thing that they've been doing for years and for centuries, dividing and conquering. And we cannot afford that.
And listen, and one thing that I will always point out from my reading and my studying, because I don't just fly off the cuff and just talk about this shit without doing research. When people talk about slavery in the Caribbean, and I'm not just talking about Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Cuba, Jamaica, Trinidad, all of the countries that were colonized, whether it was the Dutch or the British or Spain, the slavery was bad everywhere. In America, it lasted longer. In America, the effects of it has, you know, is still, you see it today with the industrial prison complex, but don't think that Puerto Rico is doing so well, because Puerto Rico, you know, cannot file for bankruptcy. The country is in debt. Haiti owed a lot of money. The Dominican Republic and how it's been exploited by the political landscape. And then you look at every country and you see lighter skinned slaves. When people say they were in the house, they were still subjected to a lot of abuse. They were still being mistreated and beaten and raped. So we need to stop romanticizing the what happened to people because dark-skinned people had it worse, which is true and valid. Lighter-skinned people did not have a field day during slavery, and in Puerto Rico, they weren't having parties with fiestas and piñatas. They were having their babies drugged by horses, and those were slaves too. They were also kidnapped from Africa, who were mistreated by the Spanish. And the Spanish, they were not kind to their slaves. So as we unpack this and we start having these conversations about stuff like that, we need to have an educated conversation. And yes, dark-skinned people have it worse, have had it worse historically, and still have it worse. Lighter-skinned people, absolutely, better sentences. We're not disputing that. What we're saying is that every single person's journey is valid, and you cannot invalidate it because it doesn't look like yours. And if we continue to do that, we will never heal and never be able to have conversations, because everybody will always be, but what about? But what about? Instead of shutting up with your what about and just hear what that person is saying, and perhaps understanding their journey. And the more we learn to do that, the more we can have conversations like this and then some. And for those of you who want to hear an Afro-Latina's perspective, you can watch last week's episode with La Gata, who will also be coming back, because we're having episode 2 when we talk about Latinos and police. But what I will not be is bullied, and what I will not be is told who and what I can do on my show, which is why I'm having it in the first place. Because Julissa, Sasha, and Gadiel's journeys are just as valid as everybody else's. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you can step away from this and go watch all the other platforms where they never have us have conversations like this, and listen to people tell you what you need to be doing and who you need to be. I want to thank you all for being here. I want people to know what you have going on, how they can how they can support you, and how they can really understand what's going on in your world, and how to show up for you in your particular world. Julissa.
For me, it's just to continue having the conversations. That's all I want. People just having these conversations, and when we put stuff out, when I put anything out, support it. support it, because that's the only way we're going to continue to have voices like mine put on platforms to continue these conversations, because there's no way I'm stopping talking about what I'm talking about. I started my career like this, and I'm going to finish out like this.
And Gente Fact comes back when?
Next year, y'all. Next year.
Cuando se termine esta vaina.
Yeah, COVID. you can go watch the first season now. It's
on Netflix. Yeah, please go. And if you haven't already, please go to my Instagram. You can go to at La Julissa. I have in my bio, I have my Oprah magazine article that I wrote, my essay, and I just feel like we need to have these conversations. And I think that's a brilliant. Something tooting my own horn. It's a brilliant starter piece to talk about, to listen, to read, to listen to, and talk to other people about. Go share it with your friends, go share it with your family. It's the first article ever published on Oprah magazine that was in Spanish, which contributes to saying Black is not just African American or in Africa. Black is all of us. Spanish people are Black, which is why that article was published on a Black magazine in Spanish. So you don't have an excuse to tell your grandma que ella no puede leer esto, que ella no sabe, or you can't translate it, because it's there for her to read it as well.
Para que te lo sepa, papá.
I
gotta add that in there for you, Julissa.
Gracias.
So you can catch me on Instagram and all social medias as Sasha Merci. And you can also catch a show that me and my lovely co-host D Nasty, we put the show together with Fuse called Like, Share, Dímelo. You can watch the first 4 episodes on YouTube TV, on YouTube's channel, whatever. But I can't wait to share more news about it, because it's gonna keep going, baby. It's gonna keep going. And I think that because we have this platform, I know that we are going to be very vocal about these things and how we have been affected, with the system, like how we see things, what is funny to us, being able to continue embracing who we are, and just sharing. And
Gadiel?
Yeah, well, I say, let's keep supporting each other. Anything Julissa has been, I'm always, because I'm like the number one hype man for Julissa. Right. And even you support also all the Sasha work. You can find me at Gadiel Del Orbe on my Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And I also want to commend Aida first and foremost, because this what you're doing, this Truth Serum, is great. I love the content you've been putting out. I watch it, and I watch every time you put something out. So the whole Killer Mike interview, which was great, the Charlemagne the God interview. Keep doing what you're doing, because I'm your number one fan. I supported you before I even know you. So, and I'm going to continue supporting you. And you're a true leader within our community. I just want to let you know. Thank you for all the work that you do and supporting us as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to be able to speak my truth, right? Because I know because of where I come from, it's quick to people be like, oh, she's ghetto, or why she talk like that, or whatever. But I feel like because you talk how you talk, it allows me to be like, yep, I can say what the fuck I want to say.
Absolutely.
What's funny is that, and we'll end on this because we're about at an hour. Especially like in comedy, they would always say, don't do that because it's ghetto, right? The ghetto people. And they try to castrate us on what we say, as if people that come from our hood don't deserve a voice. But then when you look at white people, you got the blue collar comedians who are multi-million-dollar comedians, right? They've made so much money talking about being in trailer parks, their version of the ghetto. So the only time the ghetto is a problem is when you're highlighting the ghetto when it comes to people of color, because Honey Boo Boo had one of the most successful shows on television, and that is what white people call white trash. But when it comes to people of color, Don't Be Ghetto is them trying to erase what we come from, which is a result of the way of the places that we grew up in and how we had to survive because of how systemic oppression affected our communities. So I'm a be ghetto, as Dr. Dre said in his song, I'm ghetto like Newport cigarettes, and I'm
I'm grateful.
Like Grapefruit Sweet.
That's right. I love it because I didn't get the brand new textbooks. And the teachers were scared to come to my neighborhood and teach me. And because we didn't have the best schools, and we were surviving on our way to school. So we are a product of excellence that endured in spite of the circumstances that were thrown on us. So you're never going to shame me for where I come from, because I'm everything I am because the hood loved me. And that's
that word.
I want to say thank you to all of you who tuned in. Those of you who have differing opinions, that's what this is about. People of color should be able to have different opinions, and we should be able to have conversations. Y'all can go on with that light skin, dark skin shit and keep doing the white man's work. I'm gonna keep rolling with people from all hues, and we gonna knock the doors down, and we gonna make this motherfucking world better for all of us and our children. Have a great day. Thank you so much. I love you all.
We're going to end it like this.
Right, motherfuckers.
Thank you, Aida.